Hi there, Clarissa. Welcome. Finally, this has been a long time coming. I've been trying to get you on the show for a while. Welcome to Coaches on a Mission.
Yes, thanks, Dallas. I'm super excited to finally be here.
Yeah, me too. So, you've been in the Hive for about a year and 3 months, a year and 4 months
Yeah, I
ish.
think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how's it been going for you at this season inside the program?
It's been amazing. I feel like I've really found kind of a home inside the Hive. I've been in a few coaching programs before and they were good. I learned things, but this really feels like a home, right?
I relate. I feel the same way. So,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, lucky for me. But no, I relate, and I think it's the community that we work hard to cultivate just can really be uplifting and supportive. So, we're grateful to have you.
Yeah.
So you've been going through a transformation in terms of the services you'll provide and your own education as a practitioner. Before we get into what you want to take away from our coaching conversation, can you give our listeners just a little bit of backstory or context so that they understand enough to also benefit from our coaching today?
Sure. Yeah. So I work with people that have autoimmune symptoms. They may or may not have a diagnosis. And up until now, I've been mostly coaching on the lifestyle fits,
Mhm.
right? Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction. And I am now going through a certification program that's going to allow me to add functional lab testing as well as supplements. So those are two new pieces of to what I have been doing, which I think broadens my scope a little bit.
Tell me a little bit more about your decision to do this or your intention behind adding this extra certification in.
Yeah, absolutely. So previously, I was kind of targeting people that were feeling they weren't getting the support that they needed from the doctor. And that's still what I'm looking at, but I feel like I was trying to catch them right as they were realizing that the western medicine system wasn't going to be working for them. But as I was coaching, I
Mhm.
was realizing that that's not really how most of the people were going through the journey.
Mm.
So a few people were, but I think most people didn't realize there were coaches that could fill that gap. So they weren't going searching for a coach right away.
Neat.
And instead, I realized what people were doing. They realized that the medical system wasn't going to be able to help them in this the way that they wanted. So then they started going to Google, right? They started trying to research things themselves. They found out about these elimination diets and supplements, and, you know, they realized changing some of their habits would be helpful. So then they went and they did those things.
So they hired
But
Google as their coach, essentially.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, I like to call it DIYing their health, right?
Uh-huh.
Which good on them, taking health into their own hands. But what I've realized is that they can only get so far,
Yeah.
right? They'll do the lifestyle stuff. They'll see, oh my gosh, this actually works. I got a little bit better. But then they hit a plateau. They still have quite a few symptoms. They don't know what to do. They feel like they've tried everything. And I thought
Yeah.
with those sort of people that felt like they've tried everything, a little bit more digging with the labs would be necessary in order to stop guessing, right? To
Yeah.
be able to actually help them get out of this trial and error cycle and, more bang for their buck, I think.
I totally understand. Let me reflect my understanding, and then I wanna talk for our listeners about the awareness ladder. So, my understanding is through your own marketing and client attraction and actually working with people, you found that you could be most helpful to folks who were further up the awareness ladder. I'm going to explain that to our listeners in a second. So far up the awareness ladder that it's almost like they're on a second ladder, right? So they
Right.
started going through a traditional medical system to get help. And whether it was not helpful at all, too slow, or not quite enough. They wanted to take more control of their health. So then they turned to Dr. Google and start researching different alternatives or supplements. And then that gets them to a point, but they can't really take them all the way. So the person who is likely to hire an autoimmune health coach is someone who is probably diagnosed, even if it's self diagnosed, instead of just curious about it anymore. They've
Right.
tried a lot of things and they are the top of the awareness ladder they're sitting on is functional medicine, running tests, really understanding my unique body is the next step to finally feel the way I really want to feel. Is that all accurate?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. You got it.
great. Just for our listeners, in case I know I've talked about it before on the show, but just to catch everybody up and then we'll get coaching, Clarissa. I talk a lot about the awareness ladder. So if you can imagine your dream client sits at one of three places on the ladder. At the bottom of the ladder, they are pain aware or unaware. This is just for if I have someone with an autoimmune disease, I could just shrug my shoulders and say, ugh, yeah, this is life for me and I just have to tolerate it. I don't see that I have options. I'm not even I don't see myself as capable of any other reality. In the middle of the ladder, this is someone who's pain aware, or excuse me, problem aware. They start to realize, maybe this isn't how the world works. Maybe this isn't like the law of gravity. Maybe there is something I can do about it. I'm not quite sure if I want to, if I'm capable of it, or even how to begin, but they begin to develop curiosity about what change could be possible. At the top of the ladder, this is where people are ready to invest in coaching. They are solution aware. They hold some shared beliefs with the coach they're going to hire, and they're actively seeking out a solution to the problem that they've uncovered. At the top of the ladder, they also let's call it 51%. They have a 51% belief that they are capable of accomplishing the solution, especially with the right help. Okay, so there's context for our listeners. So, with getting this certification, you are adjusting a few things, right? The the packages, the way you work with people and the marketing message because you're really talking to a different person. So, let's see how far we can get addressing those two things today. Where would you like to begin?
Yeah, if we could begin with the packaging, I think that would be maybe a good place to start.
Okay, so what questions do you have around that?
Yeah, so in my previous coaching, I was following your recommendations of doing the month to month coaching, which I
Mhm.
really loved. I loved that it didn't create a big barrier of entry for people to get started, right? It made that
Yeah.
first yes easier. But I'm not sure I can make that work with the new program because they're going to be doing lab testing upfront, which is going to be a significant fee, right?
Yeah.
And the protocol is typically 30 days, right? So I would love it if I could spread out for them those lab fees, rather
Mhm.
than having a huge fee up front. But I'm not quite sure how that works.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. I love a classic monthly retainer coaching with clients. It just makes it easy to say yes. If it's working really well, everybody stays, everybody's happy. If it's not working well, we're actually not going to hold the client to whatever, like, what are we going to do? Send the cops to their house and make them come to
Right.
their coaching session? So it's just simple. But what I'm hearing you say is with this new protocol, there's a lot of heavy lifting in the beginning. There are extra fees that you incur. So just sliding right into that month to month program or that monthly retainer doesn't work as well because there could be a world where I hire you, I get my labs, and I bounce, right? Am I
Yeah.
getting that right? Is that the concern or what is the concern
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah. So that's the concern. One, I'd like to spread it out so it's not a huge upfront cost for them.
So
But
save
yes, if
money for
I
them.
do that, like I don't make any money off the lab testing. That goes
Right.
directly to the lab. So then if they bounce, then I would be responsible for that.
Yeah.
So if I had them paid up front, though, it's also like a big cost up front. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure if there is um, a way to find some middle ground with that.
Yeah.
The other problem is that what my certification recommends to do is you do the discovery call, right?
Mhm.
From there, you would order them the labs, and then you would not have another session with them until you get the labs, right?
Ah,
Which is
mhm.
a minimum of 4 weeks, but there's one lab that must be done at a certain part of a female cycle. So it could actually be up to 8 weeks,
Right.
right? And that's a lot of wasted time in there where I could be doing work before they get the labs. But again, it makes it hard to sell like a 3 month package if that 3 months is 2 months down the road and now they're
Yeah.
just sitting here.
Right, and also just losing steam,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so we need to find a happy medium between what you've done in the past, which is just a monthly retainer,
Yeah.
and this and I just wanna be clear, when you say discovery call, do you mean a sales call or do you mean an initial coaching session?
Yeah. That would be the sales call.
Okay, okay.
The sales
So
call.
what is the happy medium between, "Great, hire me month to month, and I'll cross my fingers that I'm not gonna be in the hole paying for all your labs."
Right.
And, "Let's get started, but not really because you might have to wait quite a while before you can actually start feeling better."
Right.
Okay, okay. Alright, I have some thoughts already coming to mind. Let's do some brainstorming.
Okay.
What, if any, ideas and if there are none, that's great, but what, if any, ideas have you already considered around how you wanna design your packages?
There's not a lot. It feels very black and white to me. It feels like the safe thing to do money wise would be to ask for that lab fee up front, and then maybe I could do a month to month coaching. I guess that's a maybe a little in between.
After that? Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. Let's imagine that I have autoimmune symptoms rather. I just hired you as my coach. What, if anything, could we work on that would be valuable to me between the time I take my tests and I'm waiting for my lab results? So, if we really centered the client here first, what would we work on together during those 6 to 8 weeks that would really set us up for success when the labs arrive?
Yeah, great question. So there's certain things that everybody needs to do for general health,
Mhm.
no matter what the labs say. So fixing your sleeping routine, right? Starting to prioritize sleep. That would be something. Just cleaning up the diet a little bit, maybe adding more vegetables or, whatever it is. Those simple things, a little less takeout per week. And then the third thing that I'm looking at there would be cleaning up the environment. And I'm talking about in terms of chemicals in the home, in their personal products, in their cleaning products, and that sort of thing. Like those are things that everybody could benefit from.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I have an idea for you.
Okay.
So it sounds like, regardless of which autoimmune disease I may have, what symptoms I am experiencing, three things are true and beneficial for anyone with autoimmune symptoms. Focusing on sleep, I'm using the word balance. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but balancing the diet
Yeah.
and removing toxins from my environment. So I wonder, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, that would be a great baseline, right? A good foundation so that we can start to do that more specific work once they get the lab tests.
Yes. So I'm gonna pretend I'm you, okay? So, this is what I'm envisioning you describing to your new client. Okay. The first thing we're going to work on is getting your labs done. Let me take you through what that process looks like. We're going to get your labs ordered. That gives us 6 to 8 weeks to build our foundation. During that time, we're going to meet. How often do you normally meet with your clients, Clarissa?
Typically every other week.
Great. During that time, we're going to meet every other week, and you are on a mission. This is our on ramp. And over the next 6 weeks, our goal is to improve your sleep, balance your diet, even just 20% more than it is right now, and eliminate toxins from your home. What that's going to do is give us a running start when your labs come because we'll already have the foundation in place. So, the way that I work with clients, and we'll talk about the pricing piece in a second, is we've got an 8 week on ramp, I call it. It begins when we send your labs. We're going to meet 6 times in that 8 weeks, or maybe you say it's 12, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
To address sleep, diet, and removing toxins. Once the labs come in, we shift and we meet every other week for as long as you need support from me. So I'm envisioning a graphic of a roadmap or a checklist for them, right? Like, here is your mission and the labs become this really exciting deadline for folks, right? Let's see how far we can get before the labs even arrive, because then we'll be able to dig so much deeper. How does that, did I just
Yeah,
sell
that
something to you?
you did. You did. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I
Right?
love that. I love it.
Yeah. And again, everybody, this is so important. The question I asked was, if we centered the client first, what would actually be useful to them? And I just find centering the client is usually the path to finding the answers to these conundrums that otherwise feel almost unsolvable.
Right.
Okay. So, what question what do we need to flesh out together around this idea in order for you to feel confident moving forward with it?
Yeah, I actually feel pretty good about that transition, and I like the how far we can get by the time the labs come in. I think that will people will be very excited to see those labs. They always are.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just keep coming back to like, how do I charge for that? Is it too scary for them to step into, or just I I have this sort of issue, I guess, with pricing around this, I guess,
Mhm.
because I think healthcare is a right, and I think that we shouldn't have to pay out of our own pockets for this sort of thing. Not to say that I don't think I deserve to get paid for my work. I do, but I want people that need this to be able to get it. So by putting this big hurdle at the front end, like, it just kind of makes me a little bit sad. I don't want to like eliminate people that really do need this.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So let's talk about pricing. And I always recommend listeners that when folks come on my show, we never name prices because prices are ever evolving. So for today, Clarissa, let's just work in round numbers.
Okay.
Approximately how much does it cost a client for all of the labs?
Yeah. So round number like $1,000.
$1,000. Okay.
Yeah.
And round-ish number, what let's just say you're charging 300 a month for ongoing coaching. I'm pulling that number out of the sky, but
Yeah.
is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like the solution here is to have two different pricing structures where the first that $1,000 is absorbed into the first 3 payments, right?
Yeah.
And so they are paying more, but not too much more. So let me just think about how I would articulate this. All right, so
Okay.
here's how it works. We begin with the labs. I have set up a pricing structure to make the labs attainable to you, which I'm going to take you through that in a moment. We begin with the labs and then the games begin. We use the deadline for the labs as a challenge to see how far we can get when it comes to sleep, a balanced diet, and removing toxins. So
Mm.
here's how the pricing structure works. I work with clients on a monthly retainer. Your first 3 months, because we have those extra lab fees, and just so you know, I don't charge any extra for the labs. This goes straight to the clinic. Your first 3 months are $600 a month. After that, when we're moving into ongoing coaching, the investment drops to $300 a month. So to get started today, we can get you started with 600 and then just know that as soon as those labs come back, this becomes much more sustainable for you. Does
Okay.
that math work?
It does. It does. And that's kind of what I had in mind.
Yeah.
But the labs are already sent. So if they decide after 1 month that they don't want to come back, I mean, they won't get their results because the results come straight to me, but I've already paid for the
Yeah.
labs. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And I know you can't really hold somebody to a contract like that or anything, right?
Yeah. I wonder if the solution here, I don't know how I feel about this, but let's use it as a jumping off point, would be to really frame this as we've got our first 90 days together, right? And then the first month, you're not sending the labs in until their second payment,
Okay. Until the
right?
second
So
payment.
so they pay that 600, right? And then you roadmap the plan for sleep, the balanced diet, and removing the toxins. You're also getting things started with them, right? So
Hmm.
that they're not waiting long at all after that second payment lands to receive the equipment to take the labs. I don't quite know what I'm picturing this box coming to their house,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
little cups that they poop and pee in and ship it somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so that could be a way to do it. And again, if it's really structured, it's beneficial to them because I'm thinking about if I hire you, it's still going to be some time to get things going, right?
Right.
So it could be here's how we get started. We'll start today. Our first month is laying the foundation. We're going to get your labs ordered. We're going to start to roadmap things out. Before week 12, you will get your lab results back. So you don't have to share with them that you're waiting until that second payment processes to you don't have to share with them why you're waiting, but that
Yeah.
could be the solution, right? Is that you
Okay.
just do some prep work with them, maybe even some coaching around the support structure they need, right? Because this is not their first rodeo. They have tried other things.
Yeah.
And then start mapping out sleep, diet, and toxins, 2 sessions in that 30 days, that second
Mm.
payment processes, and then you're at least covered, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sticky, isn't it? So
It is.
tell me more about why this isn't a perfect idea. Let's see if we can problem solve around here.
Yeah. The only problem, I see its benefits. The other thing that I see is that it would slow down potentially the results that they're really looking for.
Yeah,
And a lot of these people have done a lot of the lifestyle work. So there will be things to do. Always there's things to do. But is there 3 months of things to do for certain people? They might get impatient. I wonder.
totally.
Yeah.
You know what? We're making an assumption here that people don't want to pay upfront
Right.
for fast lab results.
Yeah.
I wonder if, in client search, we talk about your chocolate and vanilla offer,
Mm.
right? I
Yes.
wonder if you give this option to the client, right? Which is maybe not this language, but there are two ways to get started. Labs are going to cost $1,000, and I have figured out a way to make that accessible for folks. So if you want to be on the fast track, what that looks like is 1,300. to get started, we can start your labs immediately and get coaching. If that is just not quite attainable to you, we can set up this alternate payment plan. It will mean that you'll get your that we will wait an extra month before we get started coaching, but it does make the labs more financially accessible to you. Which one would you prefer?
Yes. Yeah, I like that a lot. Then they have the option,
Yep.
right? And yeah, I could, after our discussion in the sales call, right, I could let them know the different things that we could work on so it doesn't feel like lost time, even if they're, yeah. Yeah, I really like the idea of putting the decision in their court.
Yeah, this is another example of centering the client. We could
Yeah.
have been talking for 2 extra hours trying to figure it out instead of letting people decide for themselves.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like your action step around this is to just noodle on this a bit and then create 2 different versions of the on-ramp. What
Okay.
does the fast track look like? Someone who can pay for the labs up front. And what does the sustainable track look like for someone who needs to break those lab payments up? And what I want you to just be mindful of with that sustainable track, Clarissa, is that you're not finding you're falling into over responsibility and feeling like it's your job to fill that gap for them. You could send them off with, okay, we're actually going to get started coaching in a month, right? We've got your labs started. Once your labs are fully paid for, that's when we get to start coaching. But
Hmm.
here's a 4-part video series, or here's your starter kit to work on this month before we begin. So I'm a little concerned because I feel like I would feel like I've created this void that then I have to work hard to fill, and I want you to
Yeah.
beware that you don't fall into that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I could see myself doing that, but now that you've mentioned it, I'm starting to have some ideas already on the starter kit, as you said. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love that.
Okay, so check in with yourself. Have we answered the question? How do I how do I design packages that make
Mhm.
this service accessible to people who may not be able to afford the labs and without making people wait a ton of time before they start gaining traction?
Right. Yeah, I think we answered it.
Amazing. It feels really good to me.
It does. Yeah, yeah. I love giving them the choice.
Great.
Yeah.
One thought, I'm foreseeing a possible concern with sales calls.
Okay.
It would be so easy for someone in the sales call to say, "Well, I really wanna do the fast track. So let me get back to you
Hmm.
when I have the $1,000 to pay for the labs."
Mm. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how would you I'm gonna totally put you on the spot here. How would you address that concern in the sales call?
Yeah. I think I would reflect back to them, that they've tried to do it on their own in the past, right? And putting off and waiting till they could make the big payment would leave them again by themselves to try and do it. So they might not gain a lot of ground in that time. But if we were to work together, even on the slower track, right, they would have some guidance, some accountability, a fresh set of eyes on it. And we could actually start to make some progress in that time, even though it would take a little bit longer to get that labs.
Yeah, and I think
That's
I might
something.
even just speak very practically to say there really isn't a difference between you putting money aside on your own and
Mm,
you putting money toward the labs right now. But my concern is that if you don't start actively showing up for this process, it's going to be easy for this to all float away on you, which is
yeah.
why we've got this payment plan available. And I wonder if you, even with the sustainable track, you could have 3 pricing structures, right? So one is they pay in full for the labs. The other is that's broken into 2 payments. There's a world where you could have someone like every 3 weeks pay $250 or something to really to design the package to just erase the objection of, well, I have to go and come up with the funds first. So
Right.
you're almost designing the savings account for them.
Yeah. That's a really interesting idea. I wouldn't have thought about that. I'll have to kind of sit down and map it out for myself. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And if you think about most people with regular jobs, at least I've heard,
Right.
get paid on these 2-week pay cycles,
hmm
right? So you could design. I want you to really consider that. I don't think it
Okay.
will complicate things. Instead, it's centering the client, making it, creating this container where they can really begin the process instead of
Yeah.
going off on their own and hoping that they'll put the money away to come back later.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea of the savings plan, doing the
Yeah.
facilitating that for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so I think we can close the book, right, for
Yeah.
now, at least, on this question around pricing and packages. I
Mm.
do, if you're open to it, wanna talk about messaging.
Okay.
Before we make that shift, I just wanna summarize for our listeners and for you what I see as your next assignment around this, and
Yeah.
that is to just map out 2 versions of the on-ramp. Right?
Okay.
What does the fast track on-ramp look like for the person who just wants to get started and can afford to pay for the labs up front? And then what does the sustainable track on-ramp look like for the person who's on a 2-pay or even a 4-pay plan?
Love it.
And then write down, I know you're taking notes. Warning, it is not my job to fill the void for the people on the payment plan.
Got it.
Okay. Let's talk about messaging. So, at the beginning of our conversation, I gave everyone a little overview of that awareness ladder.
Yeah.
You are shifting. Here's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. We are shifting the place your audience is on the awareness ladder. They're really bought into functional medicine or taking their own path for whatever reason. Maybe they're still working with a doctor, but they are actively seeking out a coach who has the ability to do these labs. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure that I'm not sure if that's true or not. Um, a number of the people that I have worked with that are a little bit further that do have the diagnosis, a lot of them have even tried functional medicine
Mhm.
and haven't, again, found a little bit of success, but not quite enough. And one
Mhm.
thing I'm realizing as I'm going through this, right? I work with a functional doctor who is amazing and I adore her. Um, but they've got still one foot in the Western medicine door, right? Just
Mhm.
instead of medicine, it's supplements, right?
Mhm.
Or I guess one of the big things that's different with what I'm doing than what I and my clients have experienced in the functional space is that in functional medicine, the doctor does one test, right? And then they treat that thing. So, for example, I had SIBO, and my doctor treated me for SIBO, and I didn't
Mhm.
get better. So then she tested me for a number of other things. Okay, now I found I have mold. So she treated me for mold, and I didn't get better. Right. And then it's been a succession of that thing now, 4 or 5 things. And there's maybe been a little bit of improvement, but it didn't get to really the whole picture. And the
Mhm.
difference with what I'm doing and why the labs are expensive up front is that we're getting kind of a 30,000-foot view, right? We're getting a really big picture, not just do you have mold, do you have SIBO, do you have this or that, right? But what are all your major organ systems doing, right? How
Yeah.
is your detox level, right? How is your um, oxidative system working, right? How's your nervous system? How's this and that? So we get a big picture. And then rather than treating anything specifically, right? We're removing all of these stressors. The things we find on the lab we call hidden stressors, right? And the belief is that the human body is capable of healing itself. It wants to heal
Yes.
itself. It's made for that. But the reason it hasn't been able to is that all these stresses are taking the body's energy from healing. So we take this big 30,000 foot view with all the labs that I do, right? We identify those hidden stressors and then we start peeling those away, right? Kind of like layers on an onion. And then the body will suddenly have that energy to do what it knows how to do to heal, right? So I think they're not necessarily seeking
Got
this
it.
out, is what I'm trying to say. It's different than what they've experienced before.
Got it. But when they hear you explain it, it clicks immediately
I
because they've been on an autoimmune journey long enough.
Yeah, I
Got
think
it.
so. I think the things that I'm going to have to point out, they're going to say I've done functional testing before, right? So I'm going to have
Mhm.
to let them know how it's different. Um, yeah, so I'm just really wondering, like, what sort of messages do I need to share with them so they kind of show up ready to do this work so that they kind of understand it or can see that it's different from what they've tried. They say I've tried supplements before. I've tried these functional lab tests before.
Mhm. Okay. So before we answer the answer to that question lies in an exercise, in an
Mm,
activity that you need to
okay.
do.
Okay.
So what is the thing that you need to do in order to uncover the concerns or objections that your messaging needs to overcome?
I'm guessing interviews is
Maybe.
yeah. I mean, some of it I've seen already from the clients that I work with, and I've done actually a couple of sales calls or practice sales calls with
Mhm.
other Hive members this week.
Mhm.
Some of them actually have autoimmune diseases, right? And that's kind of what I'm hearing. Well, I've done the things before, and the other thing is like, how do I know it will work? I've done a lot of things already. Like,
Got it.
how do I know that this is going to work? Like that, I saw more than the money objection so far. Again, the sample size is a little bit smaller, but um,
It makes sense because one thing about the client you're describing to me, they are willing to get as resourceful as they need to get in order to invest in their health.
yes, yeah, and they
And I
already
think
have. That's
they
the
already
thing.
have.
Yeah.
Yes. This is dramatic language, but they've been burned before. Not
Yes.
exactly, but not exactly, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I'm envisioning. Interviews, maybe, but you are your dream client for this. So where
Okay.
I would actually begin would be to roadmap. I'm picturing a grid. We have a column for, so this is the autoimmune journey. To like, what is the journey I take in order to be lab ready?
Mm.
And I probably start with traditional medicine. So that's the column. And what are the things I get with traditional medicine? Not what are the problems, but like what are the benefits? And then
Mhm.
I might graduate to functional medicine.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of that? And then what you offer, I'm just calling it labs, right?
Yeah.
What do the labs provide that these things do not?
Okay.
And then with the things the lab provides, the fourth column is the why column, right? Like, why does this matter?
Okay.
So, inside the Hive, for our listeners, we work on something we call catchy catchphrases, which is delivered in marketing language, the core beliefs your dream client needs to hold as true in order to be willing to invest in coaching, but also be successful in the work.
Mm.
One possible catchy catchphrase here is you may have done blank, but you haven't done labs,
Hmm.
right? By
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
So I wonder, Clarissa, before you start doing Spark interviews, is if you take the clients you've worked with, your own experience, and map out essentially your theory, a
Okay.
really solid theory of the concerns you feel need to be eliminated in your messaging in order for people to be ready to invest. And then you can road test that by doing Spark interviews. But I feel like
Okay.
the place I would begin would be to develop a theory first. How does that land for you?
That lines really well, actually. I think I have quite a bit to pull from, like you said, with my experience and the clients that I've worked with
Yeah,
before. Um, yeah, and I like the thinking about it in terms of the journey, the traditional medicine, functional medicine, in my method. You know, what are the benefits and what are they not getting in each previous?
yeah. Like, what's
Yeah,
the gap that's being left?
right.
Because you're gonna really relate to that, right? You're like, I know your journey. You started with your general practitioner, right? And
Yeah,
you got this and that and this, but you didn't get these things. And then
right.
maybe you explored Dr. Google or functional medicine, and you got these benefits. But here's
Hmm.
the reason why you still don't feel like yourself, and that's because of hidden stressors that can only be uncovered through this process.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I love that. I feel like I want to do it right now. I'm so excited.
Hey.
I'm going to go do it.
So for our listeners, I can think of so many coaches in different niches where this process would be so beneficial, right? So let's say you're a book coach, right? Your dream client has probably tried writing before, right? So that first column could be you've tried it on your own, and then maybe you did. I know way too much about book coaching because all the book coaches have been in the Hive, but then maybe you do NaNoWriMo, which is you write a novel in a month every November, and here's what that gave you, and here's what it didn't. So really to think through the client journey as the roadmap for really identifying the messaging gaps that need to be filled, because now we're talking to people who, I'll say it this way, we are eliminating the easy assumption of, yeah, I've done that. It's like, well, yes, you've done that, but you haven't done this. And here's
Right.
why it matters. Cool. Okay. So that feels like a great getting started action around messaging. Do you have any other concerns or questions right now around messaging that we could address, or do you feel complete for the time being?
Yeah, I think I feel pretty good
Yeah,
for
I think this
now.
is a good
Yeah.
starting point.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just want to say how excited I am about this new adventure you're going on in your business. I think I can just even see in the way that you talk about it, the confidence that you speak with as you're talking about this is really it's palpable, which just makes marketing more easeful. It makes selling more enjoyable. So I'm really excited for what the new year holds for you.
Thank you. Me too, Dallas. Me too. This was
Yeah.
so helpful.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, with that, we'll wrap up. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we will see you back here next week.